Hi, and welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today I'll be doing a review and a tutorial of a Casio GA 700, a relatively new model of a G-Shock. But before we move on, I just wanted to thank Silvertime Watch Store for supplying this watch, and if you want to check them out, you will find the link in the description. Also in the description you will find a table of content with time codes so you can jump to specific parts of the video or functions of the watch if you don't want to watch the whole thing. Now going back to the watch, like I said, this was a relatively new model of a G-Shock and it was released on November of 2016. Now the initial release included three versions, this, a black negative, and a red model. But later on, Casio added a lot more versions, confirming what I thought from the first time I laid my eyes on this. And that is that this was designed to repeat the success of the GA 100 and 110 series. So they pretty much took the same concept, only made it bolder. So that makes this watch look like a GA 100 on steroids. And I don't mean just the size, although this is even bigger than the GA 100. It's actually the dial that got the most of the steroid treatment, making it even more in your face and tougher looking, especially the hands and markers. I mean, they look like they're carved and have a 3D look to them that almost makes them look comical. Usually people like to say how Grand Seiko hands have a 3D look to them, but compared to these, Grand Seiko hands are as flat as pancakes. I actually love the look of these, and I love how they break the light, and also they kind of remind me of some kind of a cutting tool, especially when you see them spinning around, which is something that you will see quite often, as this watch features the hand shift function where it moves the hands away so you can have a clear view of the digital display. Now these markers are also very bold and slope downwards into what has to be one of the deepest dials I've ever come across. I mean, this thing is so deep that I have a feeling you could use it as a fish tank. You would just have to pop the crystal out and pour water in it. I believe it would even develop its own ecosystem given enough time. However, popping the crystal kind of seems impossible because, as you can see, the shape of this bezel looks like someone is grabbing the watch from behind and just squeezing the crystal. It kind of reminds me of how gems are held in place on rings. Now, I know this is not what's actually holding the crystal down, but it does give an additional feeling of security. Now, when it comes to the dial, they went with this little circle here that shows you what function you're currently in. And when you're in the home time, it's completely clear. Then you have this screen down here that's used for the day, month, and other functions. And then they added this retro-looking counting meter, and that kind of reminds me of the DW6100 from 1992, which was the first G-Shock to use a sensor. And on that model, this screen was used to track thermometer data over time. And later Casio did a tribute of that watch with the DW9052, but on the 9052 it was just used to count the seconds, just like on this. So I kind of see it as a tribute to G-Shock history, so I'm really okay with it. Now this watch has no lume whatsoever. The only thing that it has is these white lines painted on the hands. Also for illumination, it's using the usual LED at the bottom of the screen. Now I already said many times that I'm not really a big fan of that. Although on this watch it's not as terrible as on the GA 110, it's also not as great as on the Mudmaster I reviewed. It's actually somewhere in the middle, so yes, you will be able to tell the time, but no, not as easy as on the Mudmaster. Now when it comes to the buttons, they're really large and made of plastic, just like on the GA 100, although unlike the GA 100, these are really easy to press and have a wonderful tactile feel, so you really know when you press them and when you depress them. The watch also features a dedicated light button in the style of the Rangeman and the GWG Mudmaster, and I like it, although it lacks the tactile feel of the other buttons, and it's also slightly harder to press than the others. As you can see, this button is also red, and that's not the only red thing about this watch, because you see these parts that are seen here, it's actually the case underneath the bezel that's all red, made of red resin. And because of this, wherever the bezel is not covering the case, you have these cutouts that show the red underneath. Also, when you flip the watch, you will see that the lugs and the whole case is actually red. I actually like they went with this because it adds a contrast to the bezel and it really makes the watch look cool. Now when it comes to dimensions and specs, this watch is really big and wears big. There's no hiding this under a sleeve. I mean, this has a diameter of 53.4 millimeters and a lug-to-lug of 57.5. The thickness is 18.4, making it one of the thickest G-Shocks I've ever come across. And that comes to no surprise given the depth of the dial that I mentioned earlier. I mean, all that depth had to come from somewhere. But despite its huge size, it's relatively light at 69 grams, so it really wears light on the wrist. You really don't feel it. Okay, so just to give you a feeling of how big this watch is, I'm just going to compare it to two G-Shocks. The first one is the DW5000 square, which is my daily wear, and this is considered to be one of the smaller G-Shocks, and as you can see, it's really small compared to this. But not only that, now I'll compare it also to the GW69, which is considered to be a relatively a normally sized G-Shock, even considered a bit big. And as you can see, still it's really dwarfed by this beast. So this really is a very large watch. Now when it comes to the strap looks almost identical to the GA100 and 110 models, with one big difference, and that's the buckle. For some reason, Casio decided to use a plastic buckle. Now, although plastic buckles are standard on regular Casio watches, I believe this is the first G-Shock to come with it. Because, I mean, I might be wrong here, but in all my years of collecting and studying G-Shocks, I've never come across one with a plastic buckle. They always have a stainless steel buckle. I don't know why Casio decided to do this, and this is the only part of the watch I don't like. Now please note that this buckle is very massive and looks way stronger than what you find on F91 and regular Casio watches. However, I would be more secure if they used good old stainless steel like usual on usual G-Shocks. Now when it comes to the functions, this watch has a 60-minute countdown timer. It has a world time function with 31 time zones and 48 cities, including a time swap function, which is very useful if you travel a lot, and I'll show that in detail when we get to the tutorial. It has 5 alarms, with one being a snooze, and it has a 24-hour stopwatch with something they call a target alarm. Again, something that I will explain when we get to that in a couple of minutes. And it also has the hand shift function that I already mentioned earlier, where the hands move away so not to obscure the view of the digital displays, something that I find to be a must on a watch that has such wide hands as these. Now this is a regular battery operated G-Shock, and the battery is actually rated to 5 years, which is a bit unusual, but with all Casio watches, I would expect it to last at least 7 to 10 years. Anyways, this completes the review, so now we'll move on to the tutorial part. Okay, so now, just like on all other analog digital Casios, the first thing that we're going to do is show you how to check the hands position and how to correct them if they're not correct. Okay, so to check, just like on all other models, these hands always show the current time in the home time menu. So while in the home time, you have to see if these hands will match the time displayed here. Now this watch is currently showing the day of the week, the month and date on this display. But to toggle it to show the time, you press the upper button. And as you can see now, it's going to show you the seconds here and the hours and minutes here. So now you check it and you see 21:10, 21:10. So this watch is actually aligned correctly. However, if it wasn't aligned correctly, you would have to correct the hands. And to do so, you press and hold the adjust button for more than 5 seconds. So you have to ignore the first beep that takes you to the adjusting mode and just wait until the watch goes into the hand setting mode. So let's just do it. Press and hold. That was the first beep. And this is the second beep. And now, as you can see, the watch just wrote that it's in the hand setting mode, and it's gonna stop the hands at midnight if everything's okay. And with this watch it is, so we don't have to correct it. However, if you had to correct it, you would use these 2 buttons. So you can go backwards and forwards, and you can also do the speed moving. So press and hold, and the hand's gonna start spinning until you stop it with the press of any of these buttons. Okay, so let's go the other way. Press and hold until it activates. There. Just return it a bit. Okay, so once you've completed this and the hands are aligned, you press the adjust button to exit the hand setting mode. And now the watch is going to spin the hands to their correct position. Now while in the home time mode, the watch is going to display, like we said, the day of the week, the month, and the date. Also, it's going to display here whether the DST is on or off. And over here, this is the function eye, where it's going to show you what function you're currently in. When it's empty like this, that means that you're in the home time. And this counting meter here is actually what's counting the seconds in the home time. So by pressing the upper button, like I showed you, the screen is going to switch to the digital time display, with the seconds being displayed here. And as you can see, they're in sync with this display here. Now, while in the home time, to adjust the time, you press and hold the adjust button for more than 3 seconds. And once the watch enters the adjusting mode, it's going to do the hand shift function, where it's going to move the hands away from the digital display so you can set up the time. And I'll show you another trick with this. So in whatever mode you're in, if you use the setting mode or the adjusting mode, so in the alarm or in the countdown timer, the hands are going to move like this away so that you can see the screen clearly, and this is really a cool feature. Okay, so the first thing that the watch asks you is your home time. So with this, you can go with these two buttons, east or west. So once you select your time zone, and you have to select the correct time zone, because otherwise the world time function is going to be off if you mess this up. So let's just select Paris because that's my time zone. Now pressing the mode takes you to the next setting, and that's the DST. So you can toggle the DST on or off. We'll toggle it on because all daylight savings time or summertime. We're going to toggle it on because it currently is on. Pressing the mode again takes you to the 12 and 24 hour stopwatch, 12 and 24 hour selection. So here, by pressing the lower button, you can toggle it between a 12-hour selection where you're going to have the AM and PM indicator, or a 24-hour selection display where you're going to have the military time. Pressing the mode takes you to the seconds, and now if you reset the seconds after 30 seconds, you're going to move the minutes by 1 up. So if it's 21:14, it's going to be 21:15. So let's just reset them with the lower button, and as you can see, they went to 0 and the time went to 15. However, if you reset the seconds before 30 seconds like this, again with the lower button, they're going to go to 0, but the minutes are going to stay at 15. So they didn't move by 1 up. Okay, pressing the mode button takes us to the hours. You can change them by going up or down with these two buttons, and you can also speed scroll by holding it. It's going to start speed scrolling like this until you release. There. Pressing the mode takes you to the minutes. Again, you can go up or down. Pressing the mode again takes you to the year, up or down, month, date, again, everything the same, and the day is calculated automatically. Pressing the mode button takes you to the key tone, so now you can have the watch make the sounds when you press the keys, or you can have a mute function on where it doesn't make any sound when you operate the buttons. Now, this watch, unlike other Casio watches, doesn't feature a mute indicator, meaning that if you turn on the mute function, you won't be able to see it, but you're just gonna see it, hear it by the watch not making any sounds. So let's just leave it at key tone. Pressing the mode takes you to the light duration. So here you can select 3, which means 3 seconds after you press the button, or if it's at 1, it's gonna stay on for 1.5 seconds after you've pressed the button. And pressing the mode button takes you back to the selection of the home city. So if you mess up any of these up, you can just cycle back. Once you've set up everything, you press the adjust button, and now the hands are going to align themselves to the correct position. Anyways, this completes the setup of the watch and the time. Another thing that you can do while in the home time, like I said, is toggle between the digital time display and calendar. And also this watch has a direct stopwatch access, meaning that if you press the start button, the watch is going to go into the stopwatch and start the stopwatch automatically. So let's just do it. There. And then you stop it and reset it. You use it just like you would use if you were directly in the stopwatch. So a pretty cool feature. And because of this, because you have direct access to the stopwatch, they put it last when you cycle through modes with the mode button, because it makes sense. You would put it last because you have a direct access to it, so it'll be pointless to put it anywhere before. Anyways, before we move on to the next function, I just wanted to show you the manual hand shift function. So this watch not only moves the hands when you're adjusting something, but you can also manually move them away. And you do that by pressing the light button and the mode button. So you press light and mode, and the watch will move the hands away. And as you can see, when this function is on, you're going to see this HND blinking here. So the watch tells you that the hands are not broken or misaligned, but that it actually moved them away from the digital display so you could read them. And to cancel it, you just press the light and mode again, and the hands are returned to their correct position. So this is a pretty cool feature. Moving on, we go to the countdown timer, and it has a 60-minute timer, so you can start it, stop it, reset it, with the upper button, you can adjust it. So press and hold the adjust. And now you can adjust the minutes only. You cannot adjust the seconds, so the mode doesn't do anything. So you can go from 1 minute to 60. And one interesting thing is that this counting meter actually counts down the minutes from the timer. So as you can see, if I put it at 60, it's going to be at 60 of these lines. And as the timer counts down, they're going to be dropping with each minute. Also, if I put 1 minute, it's just one line. 2 minutes, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, this is rising. So it's cool that they implemented this into the timer as well. So once you've set up the timer, let's put it back to 60. And you start it. As you can see, the first minute marker here is blinking. And then when it drops to 50, 59 or 58, it's going to stop blinking. The next one is going to. So it's pretty cool how they made it. Once it reaches to zero, it's going to start beeping. Stop it, reset it. Okay, so the next function is the world time function. And in the world time function, you can unfortunately go only one way, or due east, by pressing the lower button, because pressing the upper button is not going to do anything. However, if you miss your time zone, you don't have to go all the way around the globe. By pressing these two simultaneously, it returns you back to the UTC. Now, there are two other things that you can do while in the world time function. The first one is, as usual with all Casio watches, that you can turn on the DST or daylight savings time for each time zone individually by pressing and holding the adjust button for more than 3 seconds. There, as you can see now, you changed it just for this time zone and you change the time accordingly. You can also deactivate it by also the same way by pressing and holding the adjust. There. And now the second thing that you can do is the time swap function that I mentioned earlier, and I said it's very useful for people that travel. Now, how does it work? Well, let's go back to the time zone, to the home time. In the home time, let's say if you start from your time zone, in our case this is Paris, and to check what time zone the watch is set for as the home time, you can press the adjust button in the home time zone. I forgot to mention that. So pressing that is going to write you the time zone that you're currently set up for. I mean the main time, the hands that are set up for. So as you can see, our starting point is Paris. And let's say we travel to, I don't know, Moscow. So you're going to go to the world time function. And with this button, you're going to reach Moscow. There. So now, as you can see, the hands in the world time function, the hands are going to show you your home time. So Paris time, and over here on this small screen, you're going to have the Moscow time, your destination time. So once you arrive to Moscow, this would be pretty impractical to have it like this. So you want the Moscow time to be shown on the big hands, but you still want to keep track of your home time where you're left off if you want to make some calls or something. So you want your home time to be on this small screen. Now, usually you would have to do it manually by going into the adjusting mode and then change your home city and then going into the world time and changing the world time city. But over here, you can do it by a single press of a button. So you press and hold the upper right button and the watch is going to say swap. There, and it just swapped the time zones. So now your old home time is now in this small screen, while the main hands are showing the Moscow time, your local time where you arrived. And also if you return back to the home time, you will see that now the home time zone is Moscow. So this is more practical. So any alarms that you set or anything are going to be ringing according to Moscow time. Again, when you travel back to Paris, you just go into the world time and press and hold this button again, and the time zones are going to switch again. So now again, Moscow is just the world time function, while your home time is going to become Paris again. So this is, to me, a pretty useful feature for someone who travels a lot, because you don't have to do it manually, but by a single press of a button, you can switch between the two. And this is usually found often on Citizen watches, but on Casio watches, not so much. Okay, so the next function is the alarm. And the watch has, like I said, 5 alarms, and you cycle through the alarms with the start button. And the last or 5th alarm is the snooze alarm. So once you get to that, it's going to say SNZ. And it also has an hourly chime where the watch will beep every full hour. Now each one of these can be turned on or off by pressing the upper button, like this. So as you can see, now we turned on the first alarm. If we go to the alarm 3 and we turn that on, now the alarm 3 is turned on. And as you can see, as long as any of the alarms is turned on, you're going to have this ALM symbol here. Now, if we turn on the snooze alarm, like this, it's going to have the SNZ written here. And if we turn the hourly chime, it's going to have the SIG displayed here. Now the snooze alarm, just like any other alarms, once it goes off, you can stop it with the press of any of the buttons. However, it's going to repeat itself after 5 minutes, each 5 minutes, until you go into the alarm and turn it on manually like this. Like go to the SNZ and then turn it on. Once the SNZ is off, like there's no indicator on the display, now it's going to stop repeating itself. And you can set up each of the alarms by pressing and holding the adjust button. And then you can change the hours up and down, and pressing the mode button takes you to the minutes, again up and down. Once you've selected the hours and minutes that you want, you just press the adjust button, and this alarm is going to go off at 19:59. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the alarm. And the last function is the stopwatch, and like I said, it's good that they put it last because it can also be the first because you have direct access to it. So it's a 24-hour stopwatch. You can start it, stop it, reset it. It has a split time, so you start it, you press the upper button, so the screen is going to freeze, but the stopwatch keeps running. And when you press this, it unfreezes, and you can do the first and second place. So if you have two runners, the first one goes through the finish line, you press the reset button, and the second one goes through the finish line, you press the start stop button, and now you write the time of the first one, press the reset button, it's going to show you the time of the second one, and pressing the reset again now resets the stopwatch. Now this stopwatch also features a target alarm function, which I mentioned earlier. What that means is that you can set up any target time that you want and start the stopwatch, and once the watch reaches that target time, it's going to beep telling you that you reached your target, but it's still going to keep measuring with the stopwatch. So I don't know, this is good if you, I don't know, want to run somewhere, or if you want to see how long you can last at something and you have a goal of, let's say, 1 minute or 2 minutes or 20 minutes, but you want to see how much you lasted even after that. So you put a target alarm, and once it beeps, you know that you've reached your target, but you just keep on going and the watch is going to keep measuring. So to turn on the target alarm, you press and hold the adjust button, and it's going to enter into the target setting mode. Now here, you can set, these are hours and these are the minutes. So you can set the target to any between 0 and 24 hours for each minute. So the lowest value that you can put is 1 minute. So to toggle between the hours and minutes, you use the mode button. So now let's say it's minutes, and we want to set up to 1 minute. You set up to 1 minute, but that's not all. You also have to, you can also turn the target on or off. So pressing the mode takes you to the on or off display, and with the lower button, you can toggle it on or off. When it's off, you can see there's nothing displayed, and when it's on, you have this TGT written here, meaning that the target is on. So once you've set it up like this, you press the adjust, and now the target alarm is at 1. And you start the stopwatch, and now once the stopwatch reaches 1 minute, it's going to beep and warn you that you've reached your target, but it's still going to continue measuring beyond the minute that you've set up. So I can see this as a pretty useful function for someone who's into sports and training and everything, especially something that has to do with stamina and strength and everything. So a pretty cool feature. Anyways, let's stop it, reset it. Well, this pretty much completes the whole tutorial. I hope you liked it. If you did, please like and subscribe. And thank you for watching, and until the next video, bye.